Grace and peace, everybody. Grace and peace. How are you guys doing this Sunday evening? All right. We are back. We are back, getting ready to have a conversation, another conversation about original sin. And tonight we are going to be reading some stuff from St. Augustine. All right. That's what we're going to be doing tonight. Reading some things from St. Augustine. I know that this topic has become somewhat pretty controversial. All right. People call it, quote unquote, Calvinism. So tonight we're gonna show y'all that this didn't start with John Calvin. All right. And there's been a lot of talk about what Augustine has said, what he meant, what he didn't mean. So we just go put a lot of that stuff to rest, and we are going to read what he said. All right, especially concerning original sin. I want to see, does it align with the Bible or does it not? Is it something that was made up? So, we're gonna be getting into all of that. Stuff. So yeah, that's kind of basically it. We're gonna go ahead and let the music play as people get ready to come in. Not too many people probably know that I'm live right now, but y'all know how it go. As soon as I start the live stream, people don't really start showing up until like later. Actually, let me go ahead and go live on Instagram. Make sure that that's happening. All right. How come Instagram ain't going live? All right, let me check. All right, saying that I'm streaming, but for some reason, it is not showing up. All right, so let me try this. Copy this, and I'm gonna put that stream key into here. And see if that is going to, if that's going to change anything, because I'm supposed to be showing live on Instagram. Let me see if I can refresh that. They are. Instagram seems like it's messing up. All right, so let me see. Hold on. Here we go. All right, so let me do this. Make it public. Next. Copy the stream key. We're going to put this back into. Going to put this back in the restream. We're going to paste it. Save it. And we're going to see if. Let me see. This is going to be streaming on Instagram. I don't know. Okay, now saying streaming. But for some reason, I don't know why it's not showing. Not showing that I'm streaming. I don't know. It's kind of weird. That is kind of weird. Well, I'm sorry, Instagram fam. Something's going on with Instagram to where it won't allow me to stream. But it's all good, as long as the YouTube fam is here. All right, YouTube and Facebook fam is here. If you guys are, go ahead and drop a like button and hit that notifications bell if you are a new subscriber to the channel. And then go ahead and let us know that you are in the chat. Put up like a emoji can, or just tell us where you guys are or where you guys are watching from. All right, where are you guys watching from? And listen, we just go ahead and get right into this with our Jeopardy music time, where I'm asking a question live, only on YouTube. Landscape version of the chat. Is the doctrine of original sin biblical? So far, so far, 80% of you all say yes, it is foundational to our faith. 0% of you all say no, it's man-made doctrine. 0% of you say I'm not sure, and the rest of you guys say I am just here to learn. You are just here to learn. So I'm trying to see if here we go. Gonna go ahead and got it streaming right here on the mobile version, and I think we should be all good. All right, so let's get ready to get into this. All right. Grace and peace, Brother Veckel. Grace and peace. How you doing this evening, sir? How are you doing this evening? He says, Brother Alton. Yeah, I am live. All right. Grace and peace, sir. Yeah, you guys go ahead and check out Brother Veckel. Brother Veckel, he also has a channel as well, and he covers various topics. So you guys go and check him out. All right, so now y'all know, I think this is maybe the fourth video that I'm doing on original sin. All right. I've covered kind of the definition of original sin in the other past live streams that I've done. This might be the third one. This is the third or the fourth. I don't know. Can't remember. But we laid out the definitions in the other live streams because I want people to understand what is the doctrine of original sin. All right, because we're having people who are denying the doctrines of original sin for whatever reason. I don't know. I mean, you know, people are just like, you know, they disagree or they don't think that the doctrine of original sin is biblical. So we kind of laid out the definitions and how people are, how it is viewed in the early church. All right. So one of the problems that I think that a lot of people are having when it comes to the doctrine, or people rejecting the doctrine of original sin, especially those who are Roman Catholic and Orthodox, because St. Augustine or Augustine, however people, however people pronounce his name, St. Augustine is an established church father. Okay, so he's not just some guy. He's a guy that is recognized in both the East and the West. And I think that people recognize him as the, I think one of the terms that is used is he is the father of orthodoxy. Okay. Not Eastern Orthodoxy, but he is the father of Christian orthodoxy. All right. So a lot of the things that we understand about the faith foundationally, they say that, he's kind of like the father of that. Not everything, but, quite a few things. Like he kind of takes time to flesh some things out, especially when it comes to this doctrine of original sin. So that's why when it comes down to it, people cannot just hand wave the information and just say, it's just Augustine. It's just one guy. No, it's like if you believe that you are a part of the church, the Universal Catholic Church, not Roman Catholic, all right? The Catholic Church, as in the Universal Church, especially those who claim that they are in the high church, Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodoxy, especially those two. You can't just hand wave the information that we're about to bring out about St. Augustine, all right? But let's go ahead and greet some of the fam that is here in the chat who are showing up. We got the Bible lady, Grace and Peace. She says, it's definitely foundational for the faith, but which sins are you focusing on? We're going to get into that. sis. And then we got Guy's son, Guyon, Grace and Peace. Am I saying your name correctly? Probably not. I think I said that last time. So, but Gigi, I don't want to call you Gigi. That sounds a little effeminate. I don't want to call you Gigi. All right, but Grace and Peace says specifically the original guilt aspect. Then we got K Jelly, UL. I don't know. K Jelly. He says, you want the church, the biblical, or the biblical original sin. All right, now what do you mean by that? Let me try to read that again. He says, you want the church or the biblical original sin. I don't know what you're talking about, brother. I don't know what you're talking about. Listen, we're going to have the church and we're going to have the Bible, all right? We got the church and the Bible up in here. All right, so let's not get that twisted. We got church and Bible. Church and Bible, we're going to bring it all out. And hopefully you was here for the past couple of live streams that I did on original sin, because we did go into the Bible, into the text, and I think that with these readings from St. Augustine, it's kind of going to go, it's going to cover some of the texts that we would use to defend the doctrine of original sin. He says, call me KJCD. We're going to call you KJ. Oh, I'm sorry. He was doing the emoji, not CD. He was supposed to put XD. KJ. All right. So KJ, we got KJ up in the house. KJ, did you like the video already? Hit the notifications bell, just like everybody else has done. All right. Because we need you to do that. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and get into this. All right. So let's go ahead and bring up our Logos software. Now, this is from St. Augustine, and this is one of his books. Now, this book here is a treatise on the merits and forgiveness of sins and on the baptism of infants. All right? The baptism of infants, because one of the reasons why this has become such a topic of interest is because that there's been some conversations about what happens to babies when they die. Do babies go to hell? Do babies go straight to heaven? You know, what is saying like, can we say that a baby has inherited Adam's sin? So therefore, when that baby dies, will that baby be in hell, or will that baby be with the Lord? All right. So that's why a lot of people are examining these doctrines of original sin, because everybody's trying to answer that question. What happens to babies when they die? All right. Now, some people do believe that there are elect infants and unelect infants. So there are some who will be with the Lord, and there will some who will not be with the Lord. And that has become a major point of contention. All right. So now you get people who totally reject the whole ideology of original sin based on what they believe about babies. All right. But we want to know, has the church always believed that when babies die, they automatically go to heaven? All right. Because we do got a person back around the time of Augustine, and we're not going to do it on this live stream, but we're going to cover it on another live stream where there's a guy named Pelagius. All right. Now, Pelagius believed that all babies went to heaven no matter what. As soon as they died, they went to heaven. And St. Augustine said that, nope, hold up. Let's not make that claim. All right. And he kind of lays it out. And I kind of covered it a couple of times on this channel, like against Pelagius, but I didn't get a chance to read everything against Pelagius from St. Augustine. But we'll end up doing that on another live stream. I kind of touched on it here and there, but we're going to end up getting into that. Maybe, I don't know. I might do the next installment with us touching on original sin. I might get into that, because one of the questions that I ask people, all right, is that the belief that all babies go to heaven, all right, that babies are born, everybody is born sinless. And since everybody is born sinless, when you die, you automatically get a pass into heaven. That was considered heresy in the early church, especially around the time of St. Augustine. So what St. Augustine did was that he addressed that, because guys like Pelagius were making that claim, and they considered that a heresy. They said, well, listen, if you're going to believe that everyone is born sinless and everybody gets a free pass into heaven, then that means that you will have to deny the doctrine of original sin. You will have to say that everybody is born sinless, and the Bible does not say that people are born sinless as soon as they come out of the womb, and then, later on you acquire the sin somehow. You see what I'm saying? So that's what Augustine was pushing back against, because, apparently that's what Pelagius was saying. But then there are some readings where it's just like, well, Pelagius didn't really say that. So it's a lot to kind of get into. All right. It's a lot to kind of get into. Listen, man, thank you, brother Stevie Rankins, for the first super chat of the night. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Stevie says, bless you, brother Alton. Thank you, sir. I really, really appreciate the support. Listen, and I'm glad that that you helped me out, you know what I'm saying, with the super chat, because, man, I done spent about $800 trying to trying to get this PC up and going because it was glitching and it was lagging. So, you know, I had to buy another graphics card. All right. I knew I was going to have to buy one anyway, but you know, I was trying to be a cheapskate, right? I was trying to be a cheapskate and not, and not get another graphics card. But I had to drop about 400 on the graphics card. And then in the middle of that, I had to buy these two things here. This is my RAM, all right? This is my RAM. Had to cost me about another $175. Then I had to buy another power supply, which is like another $100. So, but now we good. Now we can stream. And thanks to you guys who are supporters, who are members of the channel. Thank you guys, and thank you guys who do drop a little something, you know, in the super chats. You know, that kind of helped me out. So, you know, RAM. We're able to go live. All right. So some of y'all might not know what that is. You know, I'm just being a little corny. Let me see. Who is this? Marie says, liar. No child dies. No child who dies go to hell. They go straight to heaven. Idiots. Well, listen. Here's the thing. All right. Let's go ahead and let's help our brother out. Who is this? His name is who? Actually, he's on this one. So this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna go ahead and you know, I'm gonna do you a favor. I'm gonna put you in timeout for 24 hours, right? How about that? All right, because we're gonna have mature conversations. That's what we're gonna do. All of the name calling and all of that stuff, you know. We not doing that. All right. Who is this? I don't know who that. I can't even pronounce that name. Who is this? Oh, you know what? Let me do this. No wonder we got so many trolls showing up. No wonder we got so many trolls showing up, because I didn't put this on subscribers mode. All right, there we go. So now, in order for anybody to comment, you got to subscribe to the channel. This person says, America is finished. Oh. All right, so let's go ahead and help out whoever this is. Go ahead and help you out too. See if we can go ahead and help out a J or a Ja or whatever. I don't know. I don't see him right now. But as soon as I see him, I'm just gonna go ahead and help them out as well. Great peace to everybody who was showing up. We got Big Nate who was here. Then we got his humble servant, and we got Sister Sheila Mahone up in the chat. All right, so I forgot. Had to turn on subscribers mode on the portrait version. Okay, that's why you got the trolls showing up. But that's all right. We took care of that. All right, so let's do this. So now we got our Logos software up, and we have, we're going to be reading once again. This is Merits and Forgiveness of Sins and on the Baptism of Infants, right? This is from Saint Augustine, Bishop of Hippo. All right, this is around 412 AD. All right, 412 AD, Grace of Peace Storm ready. So this is what he says. All right, so we're gonna start out in book 1, and I'm hoping that I have enough time to read down to chapter 19. And you know, these are not long chapters. You know, that these chapters are like really, you know, they're kind of short. All right, so we could probably get through all 19 chapters, because chapter 19 is kind of around chapter, I think 17 to like 19 or so. That's kind of where we start to kind of get into the meat of it. All right. So hopefully we'll have enough time tonight. If not, then I'll split it up and then we'll do it again. All right. We'll finish it up. All right. So this is book 1, in which he refutes those who maintain. All right. So pay attention to this. in which he refutes those who maintain that Adam must have died even if he had never sinned, and that nothing of his sin has been transmitted to his posterity by natural descent. He also shows that death has not accrued to man by any necessity of his nature, but as the penalty of sin. He then proceeds to prove that in Adam's sin, his entire offspring is implicated, showing that infants are baptized for the express purpose of receiving the remission of original sin. Man, so I mean, we're probably not going to get too much into that, because I do want to touch on that whole infant baby baptism thing. Because I think that he kind of helps, he kind of holds a position that I think that a lot of us may not hold to. All right. Let me see. Hold on one second. Listen, I'm trying to get this person up out of here. I don't know how come I can see. Let me see this. Let me see. Hold on one second. Let me see this. Hold on. All right. Oh, well, anyway, nobody can see this person. But we're going to help this person right here. Somebody is popping up in the chat talking about, oh, America needs a regime change. Well, you can take that somewhere else. You can take that somewhere else. All right, cool. All right, let's get back to it. Let's get back to this. Okay. So here's chapter 1, introductory, in the shape of an inscription to his friend Marcellinus. Marcellinus. All right, Marcellinus. And this is what Augustine is writing to his friend Marcellinus. He says, however, absorbing and intense the anxieties and annoyances in the world and warmth of which we are engaged with sinful men who forsake the law of God, even though we may ascribe these very evils to the fault of our own sins, I am unwilling and, to say the truth, unable any longer to remain a debtor, my dearest Marcellinus, so that zealous affection of yours, which only enhances my own grateful and pleasant estimate of yourself. I am under the impulse of a twofold emotion. On the one hand, there is that very love which makes us unchangeably one in the one of a hope changed for the better. And on the other hand, there is a fear of offending God and yourself, who has given you so an earnest desire, in gratifying which I shall be only serving him who has given it to you. And so strongly has this impulse led and attracted me to solve to the best of my humble ability, the questions which you have submitted to me in writing, that my mind has gradually admitted this inquiry to an importance transcending that of all others, and it will now give me no rest until I accomplish something which I shall make it manifest that I have yielded, if not a sufficient, yet at any rate an obedient compliance, your own kind wish and the desire of those whom these questions are a source of anxiety. So what do we see happening right here? Grace and peace, Brother Joseph Roberts. He is my first. Actually, he might not be my first. I think HHS. My bad. Oh man, did I not greet HHS? Well, we'll go ahead and give Brother HHS a horn and a hand clap as well. Those are my first members up in the house. Grace and peace to you guys. Grace and peace to you guys for showing up to the channel. My first members. Yeah, I think it's just HHS and and Brother Elder Roberts, Brother Joseph Roberts, Elder Joseph Roberts, all right? So do we see what's happening, okay? So apparently Augustine has a friend, and his friend is bringing out these questions that we get bombarded with as well, okay? So how do we deal with infants dying, and where are they going to be? Are they going to be in hell? Are they going to be in heaven? And the way that Augustine is putting it, he's just like, yo, this is kind of like creating some anxiety. And he's just like, like Marcellus, I know that Marcellinus, I mean, you're kind of zealous for your point, but it seems like that your point is kind of driving you into some error. So maybe we need to kind of slow these conversations down, and maybe I need to try to answer some of these questions. All right. He said, maybe I need to answer some of these questions. All right. Grace and peace, wise line. And then we have Matt, who has shown up as well. So kind of like how we got some people who are like really, really zealous against the doctrine of original sin. This is what Augustine is going through in the year 412 AD. So roughly what? I want to say, what is that? Maybe about 1600 years, 1600 years or so, a little over 1600 years. This is a conversation back then. So these arguments are not new. This isn't something that just popped up during the Reformation with Luther, Calvin, and Zwingli, like a lot of people gonna say, Luther, Calvin, Zwingli. This is something that they were dealing with roughly 1600 years ago. Grace and peace to Random Catholic. All right, Random Catholic, that is another member of the channel. Grace and peace, sir. Let's see what he says. He says, original sin is biblical. You're a heretic. Two things can be true at once. God bless you. Have a nice day. Now, brother, you better be glad that he's the only Roman Catholic so far that I like and respect. All right. You better be glad, brother. You better be glad. But we're going to get them right. We bringing them home, y'all. Now, I've been playing the B3. In every live stream that I play the B3, Random, he inches more and more towards home. Just a little bit more. Just a little bit. But that's all right. With long suffering and patience. Long suffering and patience. Grace and peace to another member up in the house. We have Brother Orlando. Grace and peace. Grace and peace. His humble servant says you get an anathema and you get an anathema. Listen, man. Sheila says, but I'm the best member. Listen, sis, you ain't the best member anymore because I don't see that badge. Where that badge at? Can't be a member without that badge. Now, when you get that badge, then I don't know. Then we could talk. You got a wrench, but you ain't got the badge. All right, you got to be like HHS. The wrench and the badge. All right. So let's get back to this. All right. So yeah. Augustine is attempting to answer his friend about the doctrine of original sin. Okay. How does all of this work out? How do we get to the point to where, we believe in this doctrine? Because his friend is basically saying, nah, I don't believe that. This is kind of causing me some anxiety. How are we going to work all of this stuff out? How are we working all of this out? So this is Augustine's attempt to answer these questions. So this is chapter 2. All right. Now Augustine is about to lay this out. Now, again, if you're Roman Catholic and you're Orthodox, you can't just hand wave this stuff and just say, that he's just some guy. No, you can't hand wave Augustine. Now you can't hand wave St. Augustine. So this is what he said. This is what he starts out saying in chapter 2, right? If Adam had not sinned, he would have never died. Now, before we get into this, I gotta know who's up in the chat. How many of y'all believe that if Adam would not have sinned, he would have still died anyway. All right, because there are some people who reject the doctrine of original sin, and they believe that if he wouldn't have sinned, Adam still would have died anyway. All right. Now, a lot of us, people such as myself and a lot of you guys who are in the chat, you guys believe that in the garden, when God told Adam, especially Adam, he says, listen, do not eat from that tree. If you eat the fruit from that tree, you're going to end up, you're going to die. You will surely die. All right. You'll surely die. Now, people who reject the doctrine of original sin, they say that although God told him that, he was going to die anyway. All right. He was going to die anyway. Bruh. Okay. So this is what Augustine is addressing right now. Just like Wise Lion said, he says he is a doctor of the church. All right. Tell him, Wise Lion, listen, you can't hand wave Augustine. you can't just go, that's just Augustine. Nah, you can't do that. Grace and peace, mind of Messiah, grace and peace. And oh yeah, I want to let y'all know too. We're gonna be talking about some fathers from the East. Ooh, can't wait to get into that. Can't wait to get into that because there are some people running around here who are just like, yeah, well, they're Orthodox or they're leaning Orthodox, and they're just like, yeah, we don't believe in the doctrine of original sin and all of that stuff. But we gonna see. We gonna see what some of the fathers said on the East about original sin, and we gonna see, does it align with what Augustine said and how we believe original sin? All right, let's get back to it. All right, so again, this is St. Augustine. And he says, they who say that Adam was so formed that he would even without any detriment of sin have died, not as the penalty of sin, but from the necessity of his being, endeavor indeed to refer that passage in the law, which says, on the day ye eat thereof, ye shall surely die. So remember, I was just saying that. All right. I was just saying that. And that is reference back to Genesis 2:17. All right. So Augustine is quoting Genesis 2:17. On the day that ye eat thereof, ye shall surely die. All right. And grace and peace to everybody who is showing up right now. Grace and peace. Not the death of the body, but to the death of the soul, which takes place in sin. It is the unbelievers who have died this death, to whom the Lord pointed out when he said, let the dead bury their dead. And that is in reference to Matthew 8:22 and also Luke 9:60. Now, what would be their answer when they read that? When they read that God, when reproving and sentencing the first man after his sin, said to him, thus thou art, and unto thus shalt return. So he's just like, what answer do you got for that? All right. How do you read these texts and come to the conclusion that if Adam wouldn't have sinned, he still would have died in the first place because of his being? Now, this is kind of like when you start to get into the whole evolutionary thing and, young earth versus old earth. And, when Adam was formed and there was like other beings on the planet, there were other humans, but God chose Adam. He was just a human that God chose. But there was a whole bunch of other humans out there. But, with millions of billions of years of evolution and all of that stuff, people were living and dying and all of that stuff there. So it kind of ties into all of that. So what Augustine is saying is that, okay, so you mean to tell me that even if Adam transgressed against God, he still would have died? And he's asking, what do you do with these texts that we're reading? Right? Grace and peace, Sister Kanisha. Grace and peace, Sister Kanisha. Another member up in the chat. Grace and peace. Grace and peace. Let me see. What is Free Grace saying? Free Grace says the chat looks weird. He said, "Is it just me?" Yeah, the chat probably looks weird if you're watching. If you're watching from the portrait mode. All right. If you're watching from the portrait mode, it looks a little different from the landscape version. All right, because I got it customized to kind of fit the portrait mode. All right, that's the way I got it set up. You know, because if I try to do the landscape version, if I try to do the portrait version the same way as if I try to do the portrait version the same way as the landscape version, it's not going to look good. It's going to, you know, the text is going to be small and all of that. All right, so let's get back to this. All right, let's get back to this. Let's see what Augustine has to say. Oh, we already got it up. And then we also got Mind and Messiah. Thank you, sir. We got another super chat. Right? Got another super chat from Mind and Messiah. And like I said earlier, if you guys were not here for that, you know, thank you guys for your contributions because, like I said, I spent a lot of money trying to get my computer straight and, you know, and everything that you guys contribute and have contributed, man, it really helped me out a lot. It really helped me out a lot. Brother Mind and Messiah says, is Brother Alton working to convene ecumenical council on doctrine of sin? Apostolic succession seems to be ruptured because of different understanding about sin and its effects in us. Just saying. Yeah. You know, if you want to say that, I think this is the way that, okay, so this is my goal when I'm having these conversations and I'm bringing up church fathers and all of that stuff, because I want people to understand that, well, let me start like this, because there was, when I started addressing this, maybe about 2-3 years ago, people were saying, where is your church, Alton? Who believed like you back in the early church? Like, who believed in predestination, election, all of that stuff? So where would you go to church? All right. Where would you go to church back in the 4th, the 3rd, 4th, or 5th century? Because nobody believed like you. Remember that? That's what people were saying. So now that I started reading into these documents and I'm like, well, wait, hold on. I'm reading some stuff from the early church fathers, and it seems like that I kind of believe what they believed back then. So this kind of affirms so some of the things that I believed, you know, before I even started reading the church fathers. Now that I'm reading them, I'm just like, well, hold on. These were conversations that were being had before the time of the Reformation, 1,000 years before the time of the Reformation. And people held these views 1,000 years before the time of the Reformation. Because people try to make it seem like that what I believe is just totally foreign to the early church. So what I'm attempting to do now is saying that a lot of these ideas, they're not that foreign to the early church. So now, you know what the argument is? Oh, well, you quote mine. But now I'm taking time, I'm reading this. That's why I'm taking time to read through this verbatim. That's why I'm like, no, let's read exactly what the church fathers are saying, And shout out to HHS and Mind and Messiah and Zons, who's taking the time to read through this information as well. And streaming it live so we can all be on the same page to show that, hey, this ain't as foreign as you think it is. All right, this isn't as foreign as you think it is. Let me try to fix this real quick on my, okay, there we go. All right, cool. So I want people to understand, like, if you're going to call yourself a Christian, all right, and we're talking about doctrines, especially like this, original sin, what did the church believe about the doctrine of original sin? Because, of course, we got the text. I think that the text is clear. I really think that the text is clear on the doctrine of original sin. All right. But we have some people who say that, nope, you have the wrong interpretation because of Luther, Calvin, and Zwingli. So now that we're reading some of the early church fathers, well, that's Augustine, and a lot of people don't really agree with Augustine in the church when it comes to this. And I'm just like, well, okay, let's bring up the people who disagree with Augustine. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I'm just like, let's take our time, let's examine this, and let's read it. Let's prove all things, all right? Let's prove all things. All right, so let's get back to it. All right, so back to Augustine. So he's asking, okay? He's asking, when you're reading these texts, thus thou art, and until thus shall you return, after he had partaken of the fruit. So Augustine is asking, how can you get around that text and believe that Adam would have still lived if he would have never transgressed against God? He continues, for it was not in respect of his soul that he was, quote unquote, dust, but clearly by reason of his body, and it was by the death of the self-made same body that he was destined to return to dust. Still, although it was by reason of his body that he was dust, and although he bare about the natural body in which he was created, he would, if he had not sinned, have been changed into a spiritual body and would have passed into the incorruptible state which is promised to the faithful and the saints without the peril of death. All right? He's like, listen, he would not have died this mortal death to where, his body and all of that stuff would have went into the ground. All right? He's just like, no, he would have ended up, let's go back to it, right? He would have passed into the incorruptible state, which is promised to the faithful and the saints without the peril of death, which is what was accomplished by Christ on the cross. That's what Christ's sacrifice did for us on the cross. So therefore we don't die and then just stay buried in the ground. No, he sacrificed. So therefore, when we do die because of, Adam's, the sin of Adam, which we call original sin, yes, we are going to die, but we're going to have new bodies. And that's what we look forward to, is the time where we get our new bodies and we take off the corruptible and we put on the incorruptible. So therefore we can be in the presence of God for an eternity. All right. So that's what Augustine is breaking down. Thank you, Sister Kanisha, for the super chat. All right, thank you, sis. Thank you, sis. She says, lemon character, moving, and excitement. All right, don't know what that means, sis, but thank you, sis. I appreciate it. Appreciate all the support, y'all. Thank you. All right. He continues, and for this issue, we not only are conscious in ourselves of having an earnest desire, but we learn from it. The apostles, man, I'm trying to brain freeze. All right, let me start that again. And for this issue, not only are we conscious in ourselves of having an earnest desire, but we learn from the apostles' imitation when he says, for in this we groaned, longing to be clothed upon with our habitation, which is from heaven. If so, be that being clothed, we shall not be found naked. That's what I was just saying. Taking off that corruptible, putting on the incorruptible, having the new bodies, the new glorified bodies. For we that are in his tabernacle do groan, being burdened, not for that we would be unclothed, but clothed upon that mortality. Mortality may be swallowed up by life. Therefore, if Adam had not sinned, he would not have been divested of his body, but would have been clothed upon immortality and incorruption, that mortality might have been swallowed up of life. That is, that he might have passed from the natural body into the spiritual body. Let's drop the B3 for that. Told you, man, Augustine was cooking. He was cooking. All right, so this is chapter 3. Like I said, these chapters are they're pretty short. They're pretty short. So hopefully, like I said, we can get down to chapter 19 is where I want to end the stream. So we've already been here about 45 minutes, so I think we're making pretty good time. Chapter 3. It is one thing to be mortal, another thing to be subject to death. Nor was there any reason to fear that if he had happened to live on here longer in his natural body, he would have been oppressed with old age and have gradually, by increasing age, arrived at death. All right. So that's what they're saying, that if he would have continued to live, he would have gotten old. And the older that he got, he would have been closer to death, and then eventually he would have died. For if God granted the clothes and the shoes of the Israelites that they had waxed not old during so many years, what wonder if for obedience it had been by the power of the same God allowed to man that although he had a natural and mortal body, he should have it in a certain condition in which he might grow full of years without decrepitude. Decrepitude. Is that it? Yeah, decrepitude, and whatever God pleased, pass from mortality to immortality without the medium of death. So what is Augustine saying? He's saying that, listen, you remember when he was bringing the Israelites through the wilderness, and he's like, their clothes didn't wear out, their shoes didn't wear out, everything remained intact by his grace and by his goodness and by his mercy. How much more if those who are obedient to him, who have the flesh, especially in Adam's case, if Adam had remained obedient to God, what sense would it have made for him to still end up depreciating and dying? His body still ended up becoming corruptible. It started out incorruptible, right? Because remember, Adam was sinless. We're all born sinless, correct? But you still believe that at some point, even if he would have remained faithful to God, he would have ended up becoming corruptible, and he still would have grown old, and he still would have died? How do you make that make sense when the Israelites who were passing through the wilderness, God didn't allow their clothes and their shoes to depreciate and to get all torn up and raggedy and all of that stuff? You mean to tell me that that same God is not able to keep your body from getting old and raggedy? And eventually you'll end up to death, even if you are continuing to obey him? He's just like, yo, this doesn't make any sense. He said, this is not making sense. For even as this very flesh of ours, which we now possess, is not therefore invulnerable, because it is not necessary that it should be wounded, so also was his not therefore immortal, because there was no necessity for its dying. Such a condition, whilst still in their natural and mortal body, I suppose, was granted even to those who were translated hence without death. For Enoch and Elijah were not reduced to the decrepitude of old age by their long life. But yet I do not believe that they were then changed into that spiritual kind of body, such as imprisoned in the resurrection. I'm sorry, such is promise, my bad. Such as promise. Where the heck did I get in prison? Such as is promised in the resurrection, and which the Lord was the first to receive. Not only they probably do not need those ailments, which by their use minister refreshment to the body, but ever since their translation, they so live as to enjoy a sufficiency as was provided during the 40 days in which Elijah lived on the curse of water and cake without substantial food. Or else, if there be any need of such sustenance, they are, it may be, sustained in the paradise in some which such way as Adam was before he brought on himself expulsion therefrom by sinning. And he, as I suppose, was supplied with sustenance against the decay from the fruit of various trees and from the tree of life with security against old age. Because here's the thing. Just like God said that Adam had plenty to eat, all right, in the garden. He could eat from anything. So what Augustine is saying is that God kept Adam before he sinned, right? And he gave the man food. He gave the man food, everything to eat in the garden except for from the tree of knowledge, the tree of good and evil. He said you can eat anything you want. So Augustine is making the argument saying that he had enough to sustain him. So he would have never grown hungry. He would have never, grown of old age and then eventually died. You know, even if Adam said that, you know what, I'm going to obey God. I'm not going to touch that tree of knowledge, that tree of good and evil. I'm going to abstain from eating from that. Now, the people who are, well, in this case, people such as Marcellinus and Pelagius, they believe that, yeah, he just would have grown old and still died. And Augustine's just like, no, he wouldn't have. God would have continued to sustain him. Right? That's the God that we serve, the God who sustains those who are obedient to him. You see what I'm saying? So he's just like, no, he would have grown old and eventually died. God would have kept him for forever. Because here's the thing. If we believe that, and I don't know if Augustine is going to get to this, because here's the thing, and I've heard this before, but, and it's just been from a minority of people, thankfully, but hopefully it does not become this, I wouldn't say majority view, but hopefully this does not become a common view amongst Christians. But there are some people who believe that even though we die and we go to heaven, that the effects that we have here on earth about us growing old and dying, that's still going to take place in heaven. People are still going to be being born, living, and still dying after Christ comes back, after we get our glorified bodies, all of that stuff. There's still going to be life being born and people dying in heaven. All right. Now, I've heard that a couple of times, and thankfully I haven't heard it too much, but I'm wondering how many of y'all in the chat or listening kind of hold that view. I hope not. I hope not. Listen, y'all go ahead and hit that like button and that notification bell, especially if you are a new subscriber to the channel. And let's read some of these poll results real quick as people are coming in. And I'm asking live only on YouTube, on the landscape version, is the doctrine of original sin biblical? So far, 69% of you all say yes, it is foundational to our faith. 12% of you all say no, it is man-made doctrine. 9% of you all say, I'm not sure. And the rest of you guys who are the 9% say, I am just here to learn. His humble servant says, ain't no way. Yeah, I've heard it. I think I've heard it maybe twice. I've heard it twice that I can think of, but it's not a common view. But all I got to say is that if you guys start to hear that doctrine, just know where you heard it first, because it's out there. It's out there. All right, so this is so let's get into chapter 4. Let's see what he says in chapter 4. Even bodily death is from sin. All right? Even bodily death is from sin. But in addition to the passage where God in punishment said, thus thou art, unto thus shalt thou return, a passage which I cannot understand how anyone can apply except to the death of the body, there are other testimonies likewise from which it is most fully appears that by reason of sin, the human race has brought upon itself not spiritual death merely, but the death of the body also. The apostle says to the Romans, but if Christ be in you, the body is dead because of sin, but the spirit is life because of righteousness. If therefore the spirit of him that raised up Jesus from the dead dwell in you, he that raised up Christ Jesus from the dead shall quicken also your mortal bodies by his spirit that dwelleth in you. Boy, listen, when I was reading this the other night in my hotel room, I could not wait to get back and do a live stream on this. I absolutely could not wait. But listen, we here and we covering it right now. And actually, that scripture reference is Romans chapter 8, verses 10 and 11. Augustine continues, I think that so clear and open a sentence as this only requires to be read and not expounded. So he's just like, yo, this is plain reading of the text. How many of y'all have heard me say that, right? Plain reading of the text. And then we get some people that'll go, oh, well, you know, everybody got different interpretations, so how do we know what's plain and what's not? Well, I mean, you know, we got a early church father right here who's just like, yo, this is just plain reading of the text. Like, you don't have to try to exegete this and try to dig deep into the Greek and the Hebrew and, well, actually the Greek. All right, so it wasn't written in Hebrew because I want to be careful with my words. Because people are turning around and say, well, yeah, see, you know, the New Testament was also written in Hebrew, and I just don't want to hear all of that. So, you know, so I got to be careful with my words. But Augustine is just like, yo, this is a clear sentence, right? He says, I think that so clear and open a sentence from Romans chapter 8. All right, drop a bomb for Romans chapter 8. Y'all know that's what we start getting into that predestination and that election. Ooh. But we ain't gonna talk about that tonight. He continues, the body says he is dead not because of earthly frailty as being made of the dust of the ground, but because of sin. What more do we want? And he is most careful in his words. He does not say is mortal, but dead. All right, so chapter 5. The words morale, capable of dying, mortum, dead, and mortorius, destined to die. All right, uh-oh. Sorry, I was getting a phone call. I'm gonna have to call Pops back. Gotta call you back, Pop. Let's see. Hopefully it's not an emergency. I got my dad, you know, trying to call me. So, but if you call me again, I may have to pause the live stream real quick just to make sure everything is okay. All right. So this right here is chapter 5. Now, previous to the change into the incorruptible state, which is promised in the resurrection of the saints, the body could be mortal, capable of dying, although not destined to die, moritorious. Just as our body in its present state can, so to speak, be capable of sickness, although not destined to be sick. All right, because remember, this is something right here that has come up as well. You know, like is our bodies destined to be sick, or is it just capable of being sick? So this is kind of how you will get the whole argument of ancestral sin versus original sin. So Augustine is starting to kind of go into that to say that, hey, listen, are we destined to sin, or are we just capable of sinning? Because our opponents, you know, they'll say that, hey, listen, you know, when it comes to sin, we're just capable of sinning. Like we're born sinless and we can live a sinless life. All right. We can live a sinless life, but, you know, we're not, you know, as us being born, we're not born sinful and we're not destined to sin. So just because we're born sinful doesn't mean, or we have a sin nature, which, again, there are some people who reject that we have a sin nature. But there are some people who will say that, hey, yeah, just because we are born in a fallen, sinful world doesn't mean that we are destined to sin. All right? Let's see what Augustine continues to say. He says, for whose is the flesh which is incapable of sickness, even if from some accident it die before it is ever sick? In like manner, was man's body then mortal? And this mortality was to have been superseded by an eternal corruption. If man had preserved in righteousness, that is to say, obedience, but even that was mortal, was not made dead, mortorium, except on account of sin. For the change which is to come in at the resurrection for change which is to come in at the resurrection is, in truth, not only not to have death incidental to it, which has happened through sin, but neither is it to have mortality or the very possibility of death, which the natural body had before it sinned. He does not say, he that raised up Christ Jesus from the dead shall quicken also your dead bodies. All right, drop a bomb for that. Although he had previously said the body is dead. But his words are, he shall quicken also your mortal bodies, so that they are not only no longer dead, but no longer mortal or capable of dying, since the natural is raised spiritual, and this mortal body shall put on immortality, and mortality shall be swallowed up in life. All right? So he's going to the text, and that is 1 Corinthians chapter 15, all right? Verses 44, 53, and 55. I think somebody may have put that in the chat earlier. Chapter 6. How is it that the body is dead because of sin? All right, let's get ready to answer that question. One wonders that anything is required clearer than the proof we have given. But we must perhaps be content to hear this clear illustration gainsaid by the contention that we must understand the dead body here, in the sense of the passage where it is said, mortify your members which are upon the earth. That is Colossians 3 and 5. But it is because of righteousness and not because of sin that the body is in sense mortified. For it is to do with the works of righteousness that we mortify our bodies which are upon the earth. Or if they suppose that the phrase because of sin is added, not that we should understand because sin has been committed, but in order that sin may not be committed, as if it were said, the body indeed is dead, in order to prevent the commission of sin. What then does he mean in the next clause by adding the words, because of righteousness, to the statement, the spirit is life? For it would have been enough to simply have adjoined, the spirit is life, to have secured that we should apply hereto in order to prevent the commission of sin, so that we should thus understand the two propositions to point to one thing, that both the body is dead and the spirit is life, for the one common purpose of preventing the commission of sin. So likewise, if he had meant merely to say because of righteousness, in the sense of for the purpose of doing righteousness, the two clauses might possibly be referred to this one purpose, to the effect that both the body is dead and the spirit is life, for the purpose of doing righteousness. But as the passage actually stands, it declares that the body is dead because of sin and the spirit is life because of righteousness, attributing different merits to different things. The demerit of sin to the death of the body, and the merit of righteousness to the life of the spirit. Wherefore, if as no one can doubt, the spirit is life because of righteousness, that is, as the desert of righteousness. How ought we, or can we understand by the statement, the body is dead because of sin, anything else that the body is dead, anything else that the body is dead as the desert of sin, unless indeed we try to pervert or wrest the plainest sense of Scripture to our own arbitrary will. So he's just like, listen, if you come into a different conclusion of what I'm breaking down, you're basically twisting the Scriptures at this point. And that's what I'm trying to keep people from doing is, you know, I know that when it comes to the doctrine of original sin, people start thinking about babies and, you know, babies going to hell and all of that stuff. It's just like, let's read the text. All right, let's read the text. I don't say that the text says that babies are going to hell, because that's what people want to default to. Oh, you're just trying to say that babies are going to hell. Nobody's making an argument. All right. Now you might have some people who may make that argument, you know, who may say that, yeah, you know, I believe that there's some babies in hell. You ain't going to really find too many people. I don't think that I've ever ran into a person, especially on the reform side, who said that, yeah, you know, there's some babies in hell right now burning. And like I always tell people, my position is that I don't think that there's enough Scripture to support the idea that there are babies that are in hell. But at the same time, I don't think that there's enough Scripture to support that there are no babies in hell. All right. And that's why I'm just like, hey, let's read and let's examine some of this stuff. Let's examine the text and let's see what the early church had to say about this. And let's try to see if we can kind of, you know, come to a coherent conclusion on this, instead of just getting in our emotions and just saying that I don't believe this, and therefore if you believe differently from me, then you're a heretic, this, that, and the third, and all of that. And then y'all hand waving Augustine and all, we don't need to listen to Augustine. And I don't know. It's just, you know, it's a bunch of confusion. It's a bunch of confusion. So even like we got a bunch of people who try to twist Scripture today to their own will, right? We got people back then who tried to twist the Scripture to their own will. But besides this, additional light is afforded by the words which follow. For it is with limitation to the present time when he says that on the one hand, the body is dead because of sin, since whilst the body is unrenovated, that's a pretty that's a pretty interesting term right there. It says, whilst the body is unrenovated by the resurrection, there remains in it the desert of sin, that is, the necessity of dying. And on the other hand, that the spirit is life because of righteousness, since notwithstanding the fact that our being still burdened with the body of this death, we have already, by the renewal which has begun in our inner man, new aspirations after the righteousness of faith. Yet lest the man in his ignorance should fail to entertain the hope of the resurrection of the body, he says that the very body which he had just declared to be dead because of sin in this world will in the next world be made alive because of righteousness. And that not only in such a way as to become alive from the dead, but immortal from its mortality. All right. Chapter 7, the life of the body, the object of hope, the life of the spirit being a prelude to it. And listen, y'all hit that like button and that notifications bell if you guys are new to the channel. All right, let's read some of these comments before we get into the next section. Grace and peace, brother Spanish Fly. Grace and peace. He says, brother Alton, how have you been? It's been a while. Listen, man, been better than I deserve. The Lord has been blessing me. I ain't gonna lie about that. The Lord has been blessing me beyond measure, and I really, and I'm really undeserving of all people. I know that I'm undeserving, And then Seeking the Once Saved says, when the last time you saw an unrepentant baby? See, it's because of people like Seeking the Once Saved while I'm going through this. Although I know he ain't going to listen to what's being said and he's not going to respond accordingly, but still, I'm going to continue to go through this because I want the people that are actually listening to this to be able to say, hey, to be able to have answers to these questions. All right. And these are some of the emotional arguments, respectfully, seeking to once save. He does come to the channel. All right. He does come to the channel and he is respectful for the most part. But again, like I was saying earlier, like some of these things are emotional arguments. And I mean, you really have to deal with the information that is being brought out. Seeking to once save says, babies don't walk in darkness or refuse to walk in the light. Such terrible doctrines to say babies can go to hell. And here's the thing. And what I just say about 5 minutes ago, nobody's making that argument, but, Seeking to once save says he's going right to that argument. Right to the argument. Nobody is making an argument that babies are going to hell. And automatically he's just like, hand waving what I'm reading from Augustine, just hand waving that. Nope. Can't accept it. Grace and peace, Storm Ready, grace and peace. Skeptical Disciple says, I believe we are born without personal sin, but absolutely incapable of living a sinless life. Well, amen. That's basically what Augustine is saying as well. And this is what a lot of the church fathers that I've read, they're making that same argument. So therefore, and this is what Augustine is trying to break down, to say that there is a difference. There's a difference to sin and how we view sin. Like you have personal sins and then you have the sin nature, and I think that what is happening nowadays is, and this is another reason why I'm going through some of this stuff, because I think that the things that people should have learned in Sunday school, Bible 101, it's like people are making these arguments, and I don't think that, respectfully, some people understand the difference between the sin nature and the sins that we commit, as we get older, right? Like the different types of sin that we commit. And I think that a lot of people are just hopping on here and they're just making arguments without actually examining, like, okay, well, hey, when we talk about the sin nature or we talk about original sin, like, is there a difference? All right. Is there a difference between me going out and committing a sin, right? Unaliving somebody or partaking in, adultery or, stealing things. You see what I'm saying? It's just like, are we saying that that's what babies do? No, nobody's, no, it's like people are not really thinking and saying that, okay, well, I don't think that anyone is making that argument by saying that, well, babies make some type of personal sin. That's why they are deserving of hell or punishment or anything like that. I don't think just like I just said, like 5 minutes ago, I don't think that anybody's making that argument. But instead, it seems that people don't understand the sin nature versus sins that we commit, as we get older, like I said, and that's why I think that some people, they get dragged into rejecting original sin because of the emotions that they have within them and actually trying to get an understanding of what original sin actually teaches. People just hear Calvinism, Augustine. I totally reject it because these people believe that babies are going to hell. And it's just like nobody's making that argument. Right? Storm Ready says, what are the difference? Sinful, sin, sinless, sin, sinless, sinning, and sinners. It's bro, this is some of the stuff y'all should be asking y'all pastors. Don't wait to get on live. Don't wait till somebody hit the live button and start asking all of these questions. These are, to be honest, these are questions that y'all need to be asking y'all pastors in y'all local congregation. But the problem is that a lot of y'all are not going to local congregations. So a lot of these simple answers are not being answered. So you guys come on here, and when we're trying to have conversations to where we're getting to a little bit, into some deeper topics, some deeper discussions, you guys can't really catch up because you guys don't really understand the basics. So therefore, when we start to go through information like this, you guys get all confused because you guys have not studied the elementary things of the faith. And you're not really looking to try to understand the elementary things of the faith. So therefore, when we start to have conversations like this, then you guys are confused, and then you guys think we're saying one thing, but then you guys are, we're saying another thing, and it's just a lot of confusion. I think that you guys, again, some of you respectfully start asking some of your pastors and some of the people that you have submitted yourself to, which I'm pretty sure a lot of you haven't, But y'all really, this is why it's important to be a part of a local sound congregation. So you can have iron sharpening iron. When y'all have these questions about, hey, what is the differences of like sin, like original sin, like even Roman Catholics, they try to set it, they try to explain it like, mortal sin, venial sin, stuff like that. To try to break it down to say that, hey, there are different types of sin. Those are conversations that you guys need to be trying to have with brethren, elders of the church, pastors of the church, and all of that. All right. Let's get back to this. All right, chapter 7. Chapter 7. The life of the body is the object of hope, the life of the spirit being a prelude to it. Let me say, okay, so we already done been on an hour. So I think I might stop at chapter 9 because I kind of don't want this live stream to go too long. All right. All right. So I don't want this to go too long. So I think I'm going to read chapter 7, chapter 8, and chapter 9, and then we'll stop here. And then I'll probably continue the live stream tomorrow. All right. We'll do part 2. This is what Augustine says in chapter 7. Although I am much afraid I'm afraid that so clear a matter may rather be obscured by your exposition, Storm Ready. Man, it's like he's prophesying right now. It's like Augustine is talking to some of y'all right now, like Storm Ready. Storm Ready. Although I am much afraid that so clear a matter may be rather be obscured by exposition, I must yet request your attention to the luminous statement of the apostle. But if in Christ, says he, be in you, the body indeed is dead because of sin, but the spirit is life because of righteousness. Now this is said that men may not suppose that they derive no benefit but scant benefit from the grace of Christ, seeing that they must needs die in the body. And sometimes I'm kind of pausing too, because it's like the way that they've like translated this. It doesn't seem like that this is the way we speak. As modern day speaking Christians. That's why I'm just like, wait, hold on. I want to make sure I'm reading that right. For they are bound to remember that although their body still bears that desert of sin, which is irrevocably bound to the condition of death. All right. Listen close, Storm Ready. Listen close. Yet their spirit has already begun to live because of the righteousness of faith, although it had actually become extinct by the death, as it were, of unbelief. No small gift, therefore, he says, you must suppose to have been conferred upon you by the circumstance that Christ is in you, inasmuch as the body which is dead because of sin, your spirit is even now alive because of righteousness. So that, therefore, you should not despair of the life, even of your own body. For if the spirit of him that raised up Christ from the dead dwell in you, he that raised up Christ from the dead shall quicken also your mortal bodies by his spirit that dwelleth in you. How is it that fumes of controversy still darken so clear a light? the apostle distinctly tells you that although the body is dead because of sin within you, yet even your mortal bodies shall be made alive because of righteousness, because of which even now your spirit is life. The whole of which process is to be perfected by the grace of Christ, that is, by his spirit dwelling in you, and men still contradict. He goes on to tell us how it comes to pass that life converts death into itself by mortifying it. Therefore, brethren, he says he, we are debtors, not to the flesh, to live after the flesh, for if ye live after the flesh, ye shall die. But if ye through the Spirit do mortify the deeds of the flesh, ye shall live. Romans 8 and 12 and 13. What else does this mean but this? If ye live according to the death, we shall wholly die. But if by living according to life ye mortify the death, ye shall wholly live. All right. Chapter 8, bodily death from Adam's sin. When to the like purport he says, by man came death, by man also the resurrection of the dead. In what other sense can the passage be understood than of the death of the body? For having in view the mention of this, he proceeded to speak of the resurrection of the body and affirmed it in a most earnest and solemn discourse. In these words addressed by the Corinthians, by man came death, and by man came also the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall be made alive. All right. 1 Corinthians 15, 21 and 22. What other meaning is indeed conveyed than in the verse in which he says to the Romans, by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin. Romans 5 and 12. And remember, when we started having these conversations, we were bringing out these verses. And people were saying that, nah, this is stuff that this is like a modern Western understanding of this. Right? Like nobody really read the scriptures like this until Luther, Calvin, and Zwingli. Right? So until Luther, Calvin, and Zwingli, nobody read those texts the way that you guys understand it. But this is 412 AD. All right? This is like 1100 years before the Reformation. It's roughly 1600 years ago. And the same passages that Augustine is referencing when he's talking about like original sin, the first Adam, and then we got the second Adam, Christ, right? When we start to read these texts and we start to say that, hey, these are the texts that we use to defend our position, people are just saying, oh, well, this is stuff that just came 500 years ago. No, it came 1100 years ago. And he's breaking it down the same way that we understand it today. But people will say that our understanding of Romans 5 and 12 and what was that? 1 Corinthians 15, right? 1 Corinthians 15, 21 and 22. And we're wrong on that. Now they will have it that the death here meant is the death not of the body, but of the soul, on the pretense that another thing is spoken of to the Corinthians, where they are quite unable to understand the depth of the soul, because the subject there is treated is the resurrection of the body, which is the antithesis of the body. The death of the body. The reason, moreover, why only death here is mentioned as caused by man and not sin also is because the point of the discourse is not about righteousness, which is the antithesis of sin, but about the resurrection of the body, which is contrasted with the death of the body. And chapter 9. Sin passes on to all men by natural descent and not merely by imitation. So remember, he's still talking to his friend. What was his name? I forgot his. Marcellinus. All right, so he's still writing to his friend Marcellinus, who has a problem with the doctrine of original sin. All right, and why? Because of babies. You know, baby damnation, our babies in hell, all of that stuff, right? You know, Marcellinus wants to believe, like a lot of people that we see that are in the chat, people that we may talk to on other panels and stuff, who believe that, you know, when babies die, they automatically go to heaven. So this is the same view that Augustine's friend Marcellinus had back then. So he's addressing that, and he's taking his time to write out and explain to Marcellinus that, hey, listen, the view that you have is actually flawed and unbiblical. And he's going through these points and saying that, okay, now if you believe that, then how do we get certain passages like Romans 5 and 12 and 1 Corinthians 15, 21 and 22? Like how do you parse that out if you believe that everybody is born sinless and that until they make a personal choice or until they, in their mind consciously decides to sin, that those passages don't apply to them until they actually sin? But before they actually sin, those passages don't apply. They're just automatically sinless. So this is what he's addressing right now. And this is what he's continuing to say to his friend Marcellinus. You tell me in your letter that they endeavor to twist into some new sense the passage of the apostle in which he says, by one man's sin entered into the world, and by death, and death by sin. Romans 5 and 12, right? Yet you have not informed me of what they suppose to be the meaning of these words. Bro, let me drop a bomb for that. He's like, yo, you're still not explaining this. You just hand waving. And he's like, yet you have not informed me what they suppose to be the meaning of these words. Bro, this is what we're dealing with today. He's like, you're just making claims. You're basically just talking. And you're just like, nuh-uh. And he's just like, how do you read Romans 5 and 12 and come to the conclusion that you're coming to about people being born sinless? And the fact that Adam, although he would have, you know, if he would have never transgressed against God, he would have still died. He's just like, yo, you got a lot of stuff that's going on here that's not making any sense biblically. And he's just like, yo, bro, I bring up Romans 5 and 12, and he says, yet you have not informed me what they're supposed to be the meaning of these words. You still ain't addressing it. So that's why I tell people, listen, man, don't get too upset when you got people who don't want to answer these questions that we're asking them about these texts, because Augustine was going through the same thing in his day. He continues, but so far as I discovered from others, they think that the death which here is mentioned is not the death of the body, which they will not allow Adam to have deserved by his sin, but that of the soul, which takes place in actual sin, and that this actual sin has not been transmitted from the first man to the other persons by natural descent, but by imitation, right? So here's what he's saying. He's saying that, okay, Marcellinus, you're making the claim that the reason why people sin is because they're merely imitating Adam, and it's not because it's something that has been passed from Adam to them naturally. You're saying that people only sin because they're imitating Adam. They're just merely imitating Adam. And he's just like, yo, that's not the way it goes. Like, you've naturally inherited the sin nature from Adam. He continues. Hence, likewise, they refuse to believe Okay, so here we go. Now this is Storm Ready's part. This is we gotta read this for Storm Ready. Now this is the part that Storm Ready gotta pay attention to this part right here. All right. So Augustine is talking to you, Storm Ready. He's talking to you. Hence, likewise, they refuse to believe that in infants original sin is remitted through baptism, for they contend that no such original sin exists at all in people by their birth. Because Storm Ready does not believe that original sin exists in all people by their birth. But if the apostle had wished to assess that sin entered into the world, not by natural descent, but by imitation, right? He would have mentioned as the first offender, not Adam indeed, but the devil, for whom it is written that he sinned from the beginning, of whom we have read in the book of wisdom. Nevertheless, through the devil's envy, death entered into the world. So let's go back up a little bit. So what is he saying? Because people who reject original sin will say that, well, original sin is not because of natural descent. All right? It's not because like you have this natural inclination to sin. Like it's not something that's innately in you because you have inherited that sin nature. Because you derive from Adam's loins. Now I see that Storm Ready says the book of wisdom. Hold on a second. Oh. Bro, have you not watched my videos on the canon? Of course not. Ah, why is he talking about the book of wisdom? Because in the early, and I'm just going to briefly say this because I know some people are going to read that. Some people are going to say, wait, well, hold on. How come he's talking about the book of wisdom? Alton, I thought that you reject the book of wisdom as scripture. Because in the early church, a lot of the information that I've brought up, the book of wisdom and the apocryphal books were not viewed as scripture. However, they were viewed as texts that were edifying for church. I mean, it was books that were edifying for the teachings in the church, but they didn't put it on the same level as the writings, the New Testament writings and the Old Testament writings. All right. So they were just like, yo, this is in a totally different category. We read it, but we ain't gonna say that this is scripture. All right. So that's why. So he's just like, and he said he never read it. So he never read the book of, yeah, I mean, you know, it's all good, brother. We all ain't perfect. But anyway, just had to address that because I know that that's what I'm going to get. Some people are going to turn around and say, well, yeah, you know, Alton, you know, he argued for the 66, but then he reads something from Athanasius. I'm sorry, he reads something from Augustine, and Augustine quote the book of wisdom. But that's another topic for another discussion. All right, so people who reject original sin say it's not by natural descent, it is by imitation, right? So we imitate Adam. That's the claim. So basically what Augustine is saying is that, okay, if that's the case, if you believe that it is something that is by imitation, he's just like, okay, well, you have to apply that to the devil. Because the first offender was not Adam, indeed, but it was the devil. So that means that when you sin, you are actually imitating the devil and you're not imitating Adam. So that's why when people try to make the claim that, oh, well, the reason why we sin is because Adam sinned first. So therefore, we don't naturally inherit that sin from Adam, right? It's not something that we naturally inherit. He did it, and he had, you know, through his free will, he chose to sin against God. So therefore, God give us the free will. So therefore, we choose just like Adam did. But Augustine is saying that, no, wait, hold on. The devil was the first offender. right? The devil was the first offender. Let's continue. Now, for as much as the death as now for as much as this death came upon men from the devil, not because they were propagated by him, but because they imitated his example, and it is immediately added, and they that do hold of his side do imitate him. Accordingly, hold on, where is that? That is verses 2 and 5. I think that's what's that? Is that the Book of Wisdom? Wisdom of Solomon, yeah. Accordingly, the apostle, when mentioning sin and death together, which had passed by natural descent from one upon all men, set him down as the intruder thereof, from whom the propagation of the human race took its beginning. So that's what he's saying. He's saying that you sinning and you having that sin nature is attributed to Adam, and it is not attributed to the devil. That's why the apostles, when they're talking about how sin entered through the world, it didn't enter through the world through the devil. It entered through the sin of the first man, Adam. Romans 5 and 12. That's why Augustine, at the beginning of the chapter, which we was reading, Augustine was just like, yo, okay, you guys will sit back and hand wave Romans 5 and 12. And I'm paraphrasing. That's kind of the way he puts it. You guys will say, no, that's not it. Romans 5:12, you can't use Romans 5:12. You interpreting that wrong. And Augustine in 412 AD is saying that you're saying, no, I'm reading it wrong. My understanding is wrong, but you still have not turned around and showed me how am I reading it wrong and what is the correct interpretation of it. So that's why he's just like, okay, if I'm reading it wrong, well, then how do you get around that sin is just something that we imitate from Adam? And he's just like, if you think that it's something that is not naturally passed from Adam to you, and it's just pure imitation, well, then you got to say that, well, hold on. The devil was the first transgressor. So if that's the case, then how come the apostles didn't write about sin entering through the earth because of the devil transgressing against God? How come they wrote about Adam, the first man, transgressing against God? You see what I'm saying? So that is what Augustine is bringing out. And like I said, I was reading this the other night in the hotel room, and I'm just like, yo, I got to bring this out. I got to bring this out. But yeah, I think I'm going to stop right there. That is the 9th chapter. We're going to start at chapter 10. I don't know if I'll be able to go. I don't know. I'll see if I can go live tomorrow night. I'll see how I feel. How I feel tomorrow night when it comes, around this time tomorrow. All right, because I'm gonna be pretty busy. I've been traveling for 3 weeks. I'm finally back home. Got a lot of stuff I got to do. Listen, y'all hit that like button and that notification bell if you are a new subscriber. And let's go ahead and read this. Let's read some more of these results in the poll only on YouTube. All right. The landscape version, where I'm asking a question: is the doctrine of original sin biblical? So far, 62% of you all say yes, it is foundational to our faith. Ooh, we got a bunch of believers up in here tonight. 13% of you all say no, it's man-made doctrine. 16% of you all say that you are not sure, and 9% of you all say that you are just here to learn. Let me go ahead and read some of these comments before I get up out of here. Let's start here. I look like you guys are kind of having some conversations in the chat. The Bible lady says Romans 5:13, for until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed where there is no law. The first law was God to Adam. Spiritual things are spiritually discerned. I don't know if I understand that too much, sis. Matt says the scripture is clear. Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. All right. Skeptical Disciple says, great info, Alton. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Richard says, God said, my people perish for their lack of knowledge. And then Storm Ready says, good job, Alton. All right, good, okay. You know, listen, no matter what, I still got love and respect. Still got love and respect for Storm Ready. Still got love and respect. Twitcher Theologian says, oh, grace and peace, Twitcher Theologian who showed up. He says, I will touch on this after my discussion with Warren. I have some secret heat. All right. I want to see that. I want to see the secret heat, because I'm actually supposed to be having setting up a discussion with Warren as well. I wanted to do it this Sunday because my computer was on the fritz last weekend, and I said, well, hopefully if I can get everything up and going tonight, I would have a discussion with him. But then I saw Twitchy that you have a discussion that was set up with him, and I said, well, I'll wait till you guys have your discussion first, and then I'll have a discussion with Warren afterwards. And actually, a little known fact, me and Warren, we actually went out to lunch one day. This was maybe about 3 weeks ago, maybe about a month ago. Me and Warren, we went out to lunch because he's maybe about an hour and a half from me. So we tried to meet like in the middle, and we went out and we ate at Longhorn. All right. We went and we ate at Longhorn. Had a nice discussion. We touched on this topic. And I mean, I think we had to be in there for about an hour and a half, man, just eating, going back and forth and talking. So I like Warren as a person. I know that I disagree with him on his views about open theism and original sin and all of that stuff. But, I am going to try to have a conversation with him on my channel. And Twitchy says, yeah, he got sick and he canceled it. So yeah, and I know it's something that's been going around because there's a couple people that I know personally who ended up sick. And even when I was in Tennessee last week, there were a few people on my job who had called out sick. So it was like this whole flu something that's going around. Spanish Fly says, you look a little tired. Have you been sleeping well? Bro, I'm going to tell you like this. I've been sleeping great. I ain't even gonna lie, I've been sleeping great. It's just that I'm getting old. You know what I'm saying? I'm getting old. So, I'm not the Alton 10 years ago. Because if you guys go back to some of my early videos, I ain't got all of this great. I ain't got all of these bags. That's when I had the baby face. I had the baby face and, none of this. But I'm 43. All right. I think I started my channel when I was about 32, 33. I'm 43. I'll be 44 this year. And we haven't been here for a while, Spanish Fly. That's what it looks like, man. That's what it looks like. Let me see. Jay Repent. He says, I don't think the Augustinian conception is accurate, but I do believe in original sin. Hey, that's what I'm talking about. B3. All right. Let me see. Reese says, oh, he's getting a talk with Warren. Good deal. Yeah. I know I'm going to have a discussion, and it's probably going to be maybe later on, because, he has to get better. Then he has to have a discussion with Twitchy, and then I'll have a discussion after that. Actually, I need to get Twitchy on. All right. So I just need to try to figure out what topic I'm going to discuss. And with me traveling and then me having problems with my computer, I haven't been having, much time within the past few weeks to try to go live and set stuff up, because I was afraid that the stream was going to drop and all of that. So I kind of been falling back, but now, oof, these new computer parts, everything is running smooth now. I'm talking about, man, I got a new graphics card, had to replace the RAM, had to replace my power supply, all of that stuff. I had to upgrade the computer. So everything is running good for now. And And in the next few years, I'll be here again. Ooh, bless me. That was a violent sneeze. Hopefully I ain't coming down with nothing. Matt C says, I hope Warren watches this stream and also Mind the Messiah stream today. Yeah, Mind the Messiah has been putting in some work. Listen, that stream that we did last week, y'all sleeping on that because we went over some of the Eastern Fathers. I'm talking about, and actually, that's what I need to do when I get off. When I get off here, I'm going to rewatch that stream. And plus, they sent me some sources as well. And I actually downloaded the Orthodox Bible, the Orthodox Study Bible. That's another thing that's coming out of the pipeline, too, because we're going to be reading that. The Orthodox Study Bible, we're going to be reading that. We're going to see what they got to say about original sin. And there's some stuff that they say, it sounds almost verbatim of what we read tonight and what we're going to continue to read from Augustine. And some of the stuff that we've heard from John Calvin and the Calvinists sound like everybody on the same page when it comes to original sin. We're going to get into that. You better believe we're going to get into that. Spanish Fly says, Brother Alton, here's a scripture for you. When people argue against being born in sin, Psalm 51:5, KJV, behold, I was shipping in iniquity and in sin, my mother did conceive me. Yeah, and I brought that out. I brought that out last time. Not last time, but it was quite a few streams ago where I brought out that. And there was some controversy with that. If I'm not mistaken, I think Warren made a response. And one of the things that Warren said was, what David was saying was that he was not brought forth in iniquity because of original sin, but because his mom had apparently done something wrong. And his mom may have had an affair with another man. And that's why, that's why he was conceived. Now, excuse me. Now, the reason why people have that, where people get that ideology from, I think it is from the Jewish Mishnah. So the Jewish Mishnah purports that David's mom had an affair on his father Jesse, and then he was conceived, and that's why David wrote that. Bruh. Or, yeah, that's why he wrote that in the song. All right. So, which is totally false. There is no biblical evidence to support that. And the Mishnah, if I'm not mistaken, is it the Mishnah? Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. I think the Mishnah is kind of like the commentary on the Bible or the commentary on the Old Testament. All right. Yeah. Let me know if I'm correct on that, because it's another word that I'm thinking of too. Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank. What are the external biblical books that the Jews read? That the Jews read? It's the Mishnah, and it is the I think it starts with an M as well. Oh gosh. Well, I think that the Mishnah anyway is kind of like commentary on the Bible. That's why if you guys saw, I didn't watch it, but there was like a 3-part series of it was like a David story that just came out like last year, and it got like a lot of buzz. And the Talmud, that's what I'm thinking of. The Talmud. Now, which one is the one that is that is kind of like the commentary on the Old Testament? I think that the Mishnah is the commentary on the Old Testament. The Talmud is something else. Or is it the other way around? It's something like that. I can't remember. I can't remember which one is which. But anyway, there was a whole big controversy about the David show that came out. It was like three episodes that came out. And it was supposed to be telling the story of David. And in that story, it talks about how David's mother allegedly had an affair on Jesse, and he was born and he was conceived, but his mom ended up dying, I think that, yeah, she got eaten by a lion. You know, she tried to save she tried to save David from being attacked by a lion, and then she attacked the lion, and then she died. But then Jesse had to raise David as his own, and then there was a lot of friction between Jesse and David and all of that stuff, right? And all of that stuff comes from the Mishnah, which is the commentary on the Bible. So it's a lot. So therefore, that's why a lot of people would interpret that verse in Psalms. What is that? Let me go back to it. I want to make sure that I'm not saying Psalms 51. I almost said Psalm 53, but no, it's Psalms 51. So in Psalm 51, that's why a lot of people interpret that when it says, "Behold." Let me go back up to it. Let me read the KJV that Spanish fly put up. "Behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me." So they read that verse in the eyes of the interpretation from the Mishnah that, you know, David's mom had done something. She committed adultery, and that's why he was born and stuff like that. Instead of reading it as the way that we understand it, as acquiring that original sin from Adam. Okay, so Spanish Fly says the Mishnah, the Talmud, and the Targums. Yeah, I think that I think that they kind of pull from. I think all of those are kind of like different commentaries on the Bible, if I'm not mistaken. But I think specifically from the Mishnah, that's where they get that story of David. But I'm not sure if it's in the Talmud and the Targums, and that's why I kind of didn't want to bring up the Talmud and the Targums, because I don't think that they hold to that. I think that's more the Mishnah, because I looked it up myself, and I was like, wait, where do they get this story about David being born from an adulterous relationship? Like where did they get that? And I looked it up, and it was the Mishnah. All right, it's the Mishnah. Grace and peace, Manasseh. Grace and peace, Manasseh Jones. He says, hello, any elect sons of God in the chat aside from me? Listen, you know, if you in Christ, you are elect. All right, you are elect. Now, if you got the Spirit of the Lord and you are showing the fruit of the Spirit, we know that you are elect. We know that you are elect. Grace and peace, Jose. Let me see. Matt C says, don't the Jews view Genesis not as literal, but only moral stories? I think it depends. I think it depends on what sect of Jews that you are, that you're talking to. But if I'm not mistaken, I've talked to some Jews. I'll talk to some Jews myself, and they were just like, they don't believe that, you know, anybody before the time of Ezra existed. Right? And not to mention, what a lot of people don't understand is that there are a lot of atheist Jews. They wear the kippah. They do all of the rituals. You know, they observe Sabbath. They take all of the feast days. They partake in all of that stuff, but they don't believe that they don't believe that God existed. And that's a whole nother story. Grace and peace, grace and peace. We got the Christian King who is up in the house. Another member that has joined. And you know, Christian King, how you feeling, man? Because he was sick as well. So I think that him and Warren, they got the same thing going around. Got the same thing going around. Yo, CK, I wanted to send you something, but I've kind of been looking into this. It was something from the Babylon Bee. Not to get too far off the subject, but the Babylon Bee did like 10 points of the 10 perks of being like Roman Catholic. They did that the other day, and I was just like, yo, I would like to cover that with the Christian King. And you know, the Christian King is like the satirical Christian website, you know. And they was talking about like the 10 perks of being Roman Catholic, and one of the things was, if you kiss the head of John the Baptist, that takes time off of purgatory. Now, I don't know how true that is, and I've been looking into that, but y'all better believe when I find that, oh, I'm bringing that out. I'm bringing that out. I want to see, is there any Roman Catholic teaching anywhere where that kissing the head, one of the heads of John the Baptist, because they got 3 of them. There's 3 heads of John the Baptist that are in circulation. And apparently if you kiss the head of John the Baptist, that takes time off of purgatory.
Bruh.
All right. Listen, man, I'm getting ready to get up out of here, man. Thank y'all for showing up. Thank y'all for showing up to the live stream. Like I said, I'm going to turn this into a 2-part series when we're talking about, you know, or reading these passages from Augustine, what I just read. This is basically a 2-part series, because I can't go through all 19 of the chapters today. I stopped at chapter 9. We'll pick it up, Lord willing, tomorrow. Lord willing, tomorrow, sometime this week, we're going to pick this up and we're going to read the rest of the 9 chapters so we can see what Augustine has to say about the doctrine of original sin and how he has been, you know, addressing his friend Marcellinus, you know, in love, with love and respect, because Marcellinus seems like that he has a lot of arguments or a lot of pushback that we're receiving today from some people. And I think that Augustine is clearing it up. And Christian King says, bruh, yeah, I'm telling you, I got to look that up. I got to look that up. As soon as I find it, bro, I'm sending that your way. That is going to be, I think that's going to be something that when you come back, when you finally come back, that's going to be an eye opener. You going to be on for 5 days dealing with that. You're going to have your stream running 24/5. All right, you're gonna be on for 5 days straight. And listen, I'm a prophesy and I declare it and I'm gonna decree it right now. You bring that information up, you're gonna be live for 5 days straight. All right. But anyway, man, y'all already know what to do as we get ready to get up out of here. Y'all like this video, rate it, share, subscribe, notifications bell if you are new to the channel and you have not hit that notification bell. So whenever I get ready to go live, or whenever I upload content, you guys will be here as soon as I do so. And with that, you guys enjoy the rest of your night, and I will see you guys next time. Lord willing, peace.